There is a town at the bottom of a lake in the snowy mountains of New South Wales. Not wrecked by a flood, not lost to an earthquake, deliberately put there. The government chose the valley, chose the dam site, chose the water level, and then gave the people who lived there a few years to get out. Most of them did. Their houses went with them. Their churches went with them, brick by brick. And then the water came up, and a town that had been standing since 1830 disappeared under more than 70 meters of lake. Except it keeps coming back. Adaminaby was a pastoral town in a high country valley, established in 1830 and built over the following century into a close-knit community of timber homes, stone hotels, churches, and schools. It sat in the kind of landscape that defines the Australian high country: cold winters, good grazing, a river running through the valley floor. For more than 100 years it was exactly what it looked like: a small, prosperous, permanent town. Its fate was decided in 1949, when the Chifley Labor government launched the Snowy Mountains hydroelectric scheme. The scheme was the largest engineering project in Australian history, a network of tunnels, aqueducts, and dams designed to capture snowmelt from the Australian Alps and redirect it for electricity generation and inland irrigation. What the planners needed, at the heart of the whole system, was a reservoir large enough to regulate the entire network. They found the right geography in the valley of the Yucumbene River. The resulting reservoir, Lake Yucumbene, was designed to cover more than 14,500 hectares and hold up to 9 times the volume of Sydney Harbour. The town of Adaminaby was sitting directly in the inundation zone. In 1954, residents voted in a referendum to select a new town site, located approximately 7 to 8 kilometres to the northeast. What followed was something that had almost no precedent in Australian history: the systematic physical relocation of an entire community. The Snowy Mountains Authority ran it like a military operation. Between 1956 and 1957, more than 100 timber and weatherboard homes were cut from their stumps, jacked up onto heavy trucks, and driven across the ranges to the new site. Buildings that had been part of the town's identity for generations moved down the road on flatbeds, wobbling through mountain curves, and were lowered onto new foundations in a valley that had no history yet. The churches required something more careful. St. Mary's Catholic Church was not moved whole. It was dismantled brick by brick in the old valley and rebuilt, brick by brick, at the new site. Every stone placed back in sequence. The effort involved was extraordinary, and it says something about what the community was losing that anyone thought it was worth doing. Not everything could be saved. The stone hotels and brick residences judged too fragile or too heavy to survive the journey were flattened by Snowy Mountains Authority bulldozers. A handful of buildings on higher ground escaped the waterline entirely: the former public school, the Methodist church, the 2-story concrete police station, and they remained standing at the edge of the lake as the water rose around them. By mid-1957, the floodgates of the Yucumbene River were closed. Residents who stayed to watch described the water arriving not as a wall but as a slow, inevitable creep. Runnels moving up the hillsides, filling the gutters first, then the foundations, then the floors of houses that were no longer there. Within months, the grid of streets, the post office steps, the brick outline of St. Joseph's Convent and School, the roots of the courtyard trees, all of it was gone. Over 70 meters of water above where the town had been. The thing about Lake Yucumbene is that it is a drought indicator. In dry years, when the snowpack is low and the inflows drop, the lake level falls. During the millennium drought of the early 2000s, the level dropped by up to 36 meters. It happened again in 2018. When it drops far enough, old Adaminaby comes back. The original street grid reappears first, stone gutters emerging from the mud in their original grid pattern, dry enough to walk on. Then the concrete foundations of houses, still holding their rectangular shapes after decades underwater. The steps of the post office. The brick outline of the convent. And scattered across the dry lake bed, the debris of the 1950s. Rusted bed springs, old stoves, car chassis, broken crockery, shoes. Objects that were left behind when the trucks couldn't carry everything, or that were simply forgotten in the rush to get out before the water arrived. Former residents have walked those streets again as elderly men and women, pointing out where their front doors used to be, tracing the outline of a garden their parents planted. That experience sits somewhere between archaeology and grief, and there is no clean word for it. The government learned something from what it did to Adaminaby. When the scheme required the flooding of the nearby alpine town of Jindabyne, planners adjusted the approach. Instead of relocating the community kilometres away from its original landscape, they moved the town further up the surrounding slope, keeping it directly on the shoreline of the new lake. New Jindabyne stayed connected to the water that had defined its geography. It became a thriving tourism and alpine sports hub. Old Adaminaby's displacement taught that lesson. The original community, moved to a site with no particular relationship to its new surroundings, never recovered the economic vitality it had before. The town exists today, but it is a quieter place than it might have been. A community that was relocated and then left to find its own reasons to stay. What sits under Lake Ucumbene is not just the physical infrastructure of a 19th century town. It is the original geography of a community, the specific valley, the specific river, the specific arrangement of land that made the town make sense. The houses came out. The churches came out, brick by brick. The geography stayed behind, and it is still down there, waiting for the next drought to bring it back up into the light. If you want more stories from the parts of Australia that didn't make it onto the map, subscribe. We go deep every week.